The morning of my wedding started like a dream, until it turned into my worst nightmare. But looking back now, I wouldn't change a thing about how it all played out. My name is Celeste, and I was standing in front of the vintage mirror at St. Michael's Chapel, watching my mother Beatrice adjust my veil with trembling hands. The sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows caught the delicate lace of my dress, creating patterns that danced across the wooden floor. "You look perfect, sweetheart," Mom whispered, her voice catching. "Your father would have—" She stopped herself, but the damage was done. "Don't," I said firmly, turning to face her. "We don't need him here. Haven't needed him for 15 years. Mom nodded, brushing away a tear. "You're right. I'm sorry. This is your day." A knock at the door saved us from the awkward moment. Juliet, my best friend and maid of honor, poked her head in. 5 minutes until showtime. And Celeste, Corey is practically bouncing off the walls out there. I laughed, picturing my soon-to-be husband's nervous energy. "Tell him to save some of that bounce for our first dance." "Will do," Juliet grinned, then paused. "Oh, and there's some commotion at the entrance. Probably just late guests, but security's checking it out." Something in her tone made my stomach twist, but I pushed the feeling aside. "Everything's fine," I assured myself more than anyone else. Mom squeezed my hand. "Of course it is. Now let's get you married." The chapel doors opened, and the familiar notes of canon in D filled the air. My heart swelled as I saw Corey, waiting at the altar, his face lighting up the moment he spotted me. Each step down the aisle felt like floating, past the smiling faces of our friends and family. Then I heard it, a collective gasp from the back of the church. "Well, well, quite the celebration you've got here, princess." That voice, that awful smug voice I hadn't heard in 15 years. My body went cold as I turned to face him. River Brewer stood in the doorway, his expensive suit a stark contrast to the casual dad sweaters I remembered from childhood. His hair had gone gray at the temples, but his eyes still held that calculating gleam that used to terrify me as a kid. "What are you doing here?" Mom's voice shook as she stepped forward, positioning herself between us. "Can't a father attend his daughter's wedding?" River's smile didn't reach his eyes as he pulled an envelope from his jacket. "Besides, I brought a gift. Though you might not like what's inside, Beatrice." Corey was suddenly beside me, his hand steady on my back. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." "Oh, I don't think so." River waved the envelope. "Not until I deliver this. You see, I've recently discovered some interesting information about the ownership of a certain property. Your mother's house, to be specific." Mom's face went pale. "That's impossible. The house is mine. You signed it over in the divorce." "Did I?" River's laugh sent chills down my spine. "Maybe you should check those documents again. Carefully this time." I should have been devastated. Should have been crying or screaming or falling apart. Instead, a strange calm settled over me as I watched him swagger down the aisle, playing his little power game. "Actually," I heard myself say, "why don't you stay?" Everyone turned to stare at me, including River, whose smirk faltered slightly. "Celeste," Mom whispered, "you don't have to." "No, really," I smiled, channeling every ounce of composure I could muster. "Since you're so interested in documents today, Dad, maybe we should take a little break and review them all. Every single one." Juliet caught my eye from her spot by the altar, and I saw the slight nod she gave me. The folder we'd prepared was right where it needed to be, hidden behind the wedding cake in the reception hall. River's confidence wavered for just a moment, so brief anyone else might have missed it. But I'd spent years studying his tells, preparing for this moment. He had no idea what was coming. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced to our guests, "we're going to take a short intermission. Please help yourselves to refreshments in the reception hall. This won't take long." As the murmuring crowd began to move, I turned to Corey and whispered, "Trust me?" He squeezed my hand. "Always." River stood in the center aisle, watching me with narrowed eyes as I approached him. "What's your game, princess?" "Game?" I smiled sweetly. I'm just giving you what you wanted, an audience. Isn't that why you came? The trap was set. Now all I had to do was spring it. The reception hall buzzed with confused whispers as guests gathered around the elegantly decorated tables. Rivers strutted in like he owned the place, that manila envelope still clutched in his hand like a weapon. "Quite the spread," he said, running his finger along the edge of the wedding cake. "Must have cost a fortune. Tell me, Beatrice, how did you afford all this on a teacher's salary?" Mom's hands balled into fists at her sides. "Don't you dare. Actually, I cut in. Corey and I paid for everything ourselves. But you wouldn't know that, would you? Since you haven't been around for, 15 years? Juliet appeared at my side, champagne flute in hand. "Here, Celeste, you look like you could use this." I took the glass, catching her subtle wink. The signal. Our evidence folder was ready. "Let's cut to the chase," River announced, slapping his envelope down on the nearest table. "These documents show that the house transfer was never properly executed. There were irregularities in the paperwork. The property is still legally mine." "That's a lie." Mom stepped forward. "We had lawyers. Everything was done properly." "Was it?" River spread the papers across the table. "Because according to these, your signature appears on the wrong line. A simple clerical error, but legally significant." I watched Mom's face crumble as she scanned the documents. My blood boiled, but I kept my voice steady. "Interesting timing, Dad. 15 years of silence, and you show up now, on my wedding day. Business is business, Princess. Nothing personal." "Nothing personal," I laughed. The sound sharp enough to make nearby guests jump, like it wasn't personal when you disappeared without a word. When you missed my high school graduation. When Mom had to work 3 jobs to keep us afloat. River's smile tightened. "Ancient history. We're here to discuss the present." "Yes, let's discuss the present." I nodded to Juliet, who slipped away toward the cake table. "Tell me, how's Serena doing?" The color drained from his face. "Who?" "Oh, sorry. Should I call her your wife? Or is that too awkward, since you never actually divorced Mom before you married her?" A glass shattered somewhere in the crowd. The whispers grew louder. "You don't know what you're talking about," Rivers snarled, but his eyes darted toward the exit. "Don't I?" I turned to address our guests. "Sorry, everyone, but it seems we're having an impromptu family reunion. Dad here has been busy since he left us. New wife, new kid. What's your daughter's name again?" "Addison." "Shut up," River hissed, grabbing my arm. Corey stepped between us instantly. "Take your hand off my bride." "Or what, boy? Or I'll have security escort you out." Corey's voice was calm but firm. "After we call the police about your bigamy, of course." Juliet returned, sliding a thick folder into my hands. "Looking for these, River?" I opened it, making sure he could see the contents. Marriage certificates, birth records, property deeds, bank statements. Funny thing about the digital age, secrets don't stay buried forever. "Where did you get those?" River's voice shook. "Does it matter? What matters is that while you were plotting to steal Mom's house, you forgot about the paper trail you left behind. 15 years of lies, all documented right here." Mom stepped forward, her voice stronger now. "Is it true? Did you really marry someone else?" "Beatrice, I can explain." "Save it." I cut him off. "The explanation is simple. You're a fraud. And now everyone knows it." A new voice spoke up from the back of the room. "Dad." The crowd parted, and there stood a young woman with River's eyes and dark hair. Addison. She wasn't supposed to arrive for another hour, but her timing couldn't have been more perfect. River's face went from white to green. "Addison, what are you doing here?" "I was invited," she said, her voice trembling. "By Celeste, my sister." She turned to Mom. "And you must be his first wife." The room fell silent. River looked like a cornered animal, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. "Security," Corey called out. "Please show Mr. Brewer out. And make sure to get his current address. His lawyers will be in touch about those property documents, all of them." As 2 guards approached, River jabbed a finger at me. This isn't over, princess. Oh, but it is, I smiled, raising my champagne glass. By the way, thanks for coming to my wedding. It wouldn't have been the same without you. The guards escorted him out, his threats echoing down the hallway. But I barely heard them over the blood rushing in my ears. Phase 1 was complete, but this was just the beginning. I turned to Addison, who stood awkwardly in the crowd. Sorry about the dramatic introduction. Would you like some cake? We have a lot to talk about. I can't believe he kept you a secret from us for all these years, Mom said softly, pushing a slice of wedding cake toward Addison. We'd moved to a private room adjacent to the reception hall, leaving Corey and Juliet to manage the stunned guests. Addison stared at the cake, her fingers tracing patterns on the tablecloth. He kept you a secret from us, too. Well, mostly. I found out about you 6 months ago. How? I leaned forward, curious despite myself. I was helping Mom, Serena, clean out the attic. Found an old box with newspaper clippings about your mom's teaching awards. When I confronted him, he said you both died in a car accident. Mom's fork clattered against her plate. He told you we were dead. Yeah. Addison's laugh was bitter. Imagine my surprise when I got a wedding invitation from my supposedly deceased sister. I reached for my purse and pulled out a worn photograph. This is how I found you. It fell out of River's wallet the last time I saw him, when I was 13. He'd shown up drunk, demanding to see Mom. The photo showed a younger Addison, maybe 7 or 8, sitting on a porch swing. I'd kept it all these years, wondering about the girl who shared my father's smile. I remember that day, Addison whispered. It was right before he lost his job at the investment firm. Everything changed after that. Mom's head snapped up. What investment firm? Bradford Securities. He was there for almost 10 years, until… 10 years, Mom interrupted. That's impossible. He told me he was fired from Bradford 6 months after we divorced. I felt the pieces clicking into place. He lied. To both families. Used one as a cover for the other. Classic River, Mom muttered. Always working an angle. A knock at the door made us all jump. Juliet poked her head in. Sorry to interrupt, but you need to see this. She handed me her phone. On the screen was a social media post from River, already gathering hundreds of comments. Heartbroken father ambushed at daughter's wedding. The lengths some people will go to for money. The truth will come out. He's trying to control the narrative, I said, gripping the phone tightly. Just like always. There's more, Juliet hesitated. He's outside in the parking lot, giving some kind of interview to a local news blogger. Of course he is. I stood up, straightening my wedding dress. Well, let's go give them the real story. Celeste, wait, Addison grabbed my arm. There's something else you should know about the house. I sat back down slowly. What about it? Last week, I overheard him on the phone. He's in trouble. Serious trouble. Something about investors and missing funds. He needs cash fast, and he thinks your mom's house is worth a fortune because of the new development plans for that area. Mom went pale. The university expansion project. They've been buying up properties all around us. Exactly. Addison nodded. He's not after the house. He's after the buyout money from the university. I felt a cold anger settle in my chest. So that's his game. Swoop in, claim the house, sell it for a profit, and disappear again. He's desperate, Addison added. I've never seen him like this. He's been making calls at all hours, arguing with people about payment deadlines. Juliet, who'd been quietly typing on her phone, looked up. Want me to make some calls? I still have contacts at the SEC from my reporting days. I nodded. Do it, and Addison, we'll need everything you can remember about those phone calls. I'll help, she said firmly. I'm tired of the lies too. Mom reached across the table and squeezed her hand. You're very brave, doing this. I just wish, Addison's voice cracked. I wish I'd known about you sooner, about having a sister. Better late than never, I smiled, then turned serious. But right now, we need to deal with the circus outside. Ready to tell the world who River Brewer really is. Addison stood up, squaring her shoulders. Ready. As we headed for the door, Mom called out, "Celeste, what about your wedding?" I'd almost forgotten. "The wedding can wait an hour. Corey understands." "He's a good man," Mom said softly. "He is," I agreed, "and after we're done with River, I'm going to marry him in front of everyone who matters." I looked at Addison, including my sister. We walked toward the parking lot, my white dress gleaming in the afternoon sun. River wanted to play games, fine. But this time, I had something he didn't expect, the truth, and a sister who was ready to tell it. Through the glass doors, I could see him gesturing dramatically to a small crowd. Time to crash his performance with a finale he'd never forget. The parking lot fell silent as I pushed through the glass doors, my wedding dress catching the sunlight. River stood surrounded by a small crowd, his phone held up like a shield. And then my own daughter ambushed me with lies. He stopped mid-sentence as he spotted us. "What are you doing here?" "Funny," I called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I was about to ask you the same thing, still trying to spin your story." River's eyes narrowed as he noticed Addison beside me. "Sweetheart, what are you doing with her?" "Don't sweetheart me," Addison snapped. "Not after everything you've done." The blogger recording River perked up, swinging her camera toward us. "And who might you be?" "I'm his other daughter," Addison said clearly. "The one he had with his second wife, while still legally married to Celeste's mother." Phones appeared everywhere, recording the scene. River's face twisted with rage. "You're making a mistake," he hissed at Addison. "Think about your mother." "Oh, let's talk about mothers." I stepped forward. "Tell them how you left my mom with nothing, how you vanished for 15 years, only to show up today with fake documents, trying to steal her house." "Those documents are legal." "Are they?" Juliet emerged from behind us, her phone held high. "Because I just got off the phone with Marcus at Bradford Securities. You remember him, right? He had some interesting things to say about your time there." River's face went ash white. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Juliet smiled. "Should I call him back, put him on speaker, let him tell everyone about the missing investor funds?" The blogger's camera swung between us like a tennis match. "Sir, would you care to comment on these allegations?" "This is ridiculous." River backed away. "I don't have to listen to these lies." "Running away again, Dad," I called after him. "It's what you do best, isn't it?" He spun around, jabbing a finger at me. "You ungrateful little—" "Careful." Corey's voice cut through the tension as he stepped in front of me. "Choose your next words very carefully." River's face reddened. "This is all your fault. You turned my daughter against me." "No, Dad," I said quietly. "You did that all on your own." "Mr. Brewer," the blogger pressed, "what about the allegations of bigamy and the missing funds?" "No comment," he snarled, turning toward his car. "Wait." Addison's voice cracked like a whip. "What about Mom's savings? The investment account you convinced her to open?" River froze, hand on his car door. "What investment account?" I asked. "The one he made her open last month." Addison's voice shook. $300,000, her entire inheritance from Grandma. Juliet was already dialing. "I'm calling the SEC right now." "You can't prove anything." River's voice had lost its edge, replaced by something close to panic. "Actually, I pulled out my phone. Addison sent me screenshots of everything. Bank transfers, account numbers, your emails to the investment firm, which, by the way, doesn't exist." The crowd murmured. More phones appeared, recording River's crumbling facade. "Addison," he pleaded. "Princess, you don't understand." "Don't call me princess," she spat. "I understand perfectly. You're a fraud, a liar, and now everyone knows it." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. "That'll be the police," Juliet announced. "They're very interested in speaking with you about several things." River yanked his car door open, but Corey was faster. He slammed it shut, keeping his hand firmly in place. "Move," River growled. "No," Corey said simply. "You've run away enough times." The police cruiser pulled into the parking lot, lights flashing. River's shoulders slumped in defeat. "You've ruined everything," he muttered as two officers approached. "No, Dad," I said, watching as they led him away. "You did that yourself, one lie at a time." The blogger turned to me, camera still rolling. "Would you like to make a statement?" I looked at Addison, then at Mom, who had joined us, standing tall despite her tears. "Yes," I said, facing the camera. "I'd like to tell the truth about River Brewer, all of it." As I began to speak, I felt Corey's hand slip into mine. My wedding dress sparkled in the afternoon sun, a reminder that this day wasn't over yet. River had tried to ruin it, but he'd only succeeded in making it more memorable. Because today wasn't just about exposing his lies, it was about finding the truth, and finding the sister I never knew I had. The police car pulled away, carrying River and his schemes with it. But we weren't done yet, not by a long shot. Back inside the chapel's side room, Addison paced nervously, her phone buzzing every few seconds. "Mom's going to kill me when she finds out what I did." "Your mom, Serena, she really doesn't know anything about this?" I asked, still trying to process everything. "No, Addison's phone lit up again. "Oh God, speaking of Mom." She held up the screen, showing an incoming call. "Answer it," I encouraged. "Put it on speaker." Addison's hand trembled as she hit the button. "Hi, Mom." "Addison Marie, where are you?" Serena's voice crackled through the speaker. "I just got the most bizarre call from the police about your father, and there's some viral video." "Mom, I can explain." "Please do, because I'm looking at a video of you at someone's wedding, calling yourself River's other daughter, and I don't understand what's happening." I leaned toward the phone. "Mrs. Brewer, this is Celeste. I'm River's first daughter." Silence crackled over the line. "First daughter." Serena's voice had gone quiet. "What do you mean, first daughter?" "Mom." Addison took a deep breath. "Dad was already married when he met you. He never got divorced. Celeste and her mom, Beatrice. They're his first family." The sound of something shattering came through the speaker. "That's impossible. We've been married for 20 years. "Actually," Mom spoke up, "we've been married for 28 years, never divorced." Another long silence. Who is that speaking?" "I'm Beatrice, River's wife, his first wife." Serena's breathing became audible. "I think I need to sit down." "Mom," Addison said urgently, "there's more. The investment account you opened last month, the one with Grandma's inheritance, Dad was stealing that money." "No," Serena's voice cracked. "He said it was for your college fund." "Mrs. Brewer," Juliet cut in, "I'm a former financial reporter. I've been making calls. The investment firm doesn't exist. It's a shell company River created." But, Serena's composure crumbled. "Everything we have is in that account." The door burst open, and Corey rushed in. "Sorry to interrupt, but we've got another problem. River made bail." "What?" I stood up so fast my wedding dress rustled. "How?" "Doesn't matter," Corey said grimly. "What matters is he's heading to your mom's house right now. Security camera caught him pulling up." "He's going for the property documents," Mom gasped. "The originals are in my safe." "Mrs. Brewer," I spoke into the phone, "I have to go, but please, come to St. Michael's Chapel. We need to talk, all of us." "I'm already on my way." Serena's voice had hardened. "And Celeste? Get those documents before he does." I ended the call and turned to Corey. "Keys to the Jeep?" "I'm driving," he said firmly. "Juliet, stay here with Addison. Keep the guests calm." "What about me?" Mom stepped forward. "You're coming with us," I decided. "It's your house, your documents." We raced to the parking lot, my wedding dress hiked up around my knees. As Corey sped toward Mom's house, I called the police. "They're sending a car," I reported, "but it'll take 10 minutes. "We'll be there in 5. Corey pressed the accelerator. Mom clutched the door handle. "The safe is behind my bedroom mirror. The combination is your birthday." We screeched to a stop in front of the house. River's rental car sat in the driveway, driver's door still open. "Stay here," Corey ordered, but I was already out of the car. "Like hell I will. This ends now." We burst through the front door to find River halfway up the stairs, his suit jacket discarded, tie loose. "Stop right there," I shouted. He turned, eyes wild. "You don't understand. I need those papers." "Why?" I demanded. "So you can steal from Mom like you stole from Serena." "I didn't steal anything. I was investing." "In what?" Mom's voice rang out. "More lies? More secret families?" River's face contorted. "You think you know everything, don't you? You have no idea what I've sacrificed." "Save it." I cut him off. "Police are on their way. Step away from the stairs." "No," he snarled, turning to run up them. Corey moved faster than I'd ever seen, taking the stairs two at a time. He caught River by the back of his shirt, yanking him backward. They both tumbled down several steps before Corey pinned River to the ground. "Get the documents," he shouted at me. I raced upstairs, Mom right behind me. We could hear sirens in the distance as I reached for the mirror, my wedding dress reflecting in its surface like a ghost of better times. The safe waited behind it, holding either our salvation or our destruction. My fingers moved to the keypad as River's shouts echoed from below. The safe clicked open just as heavy footsteps thundered up the stairs. Mom grabbed the stack of documents while I slammed the safe shut. "Got them." Mom clutched the papers to her chest. River appeared in the doorway, having somehow broken free from Corey. His white shirt was torn, a thin line of blood trickling from his nose. "Give me those papers," he growled. "Or what?" I stepped in front of Mom. "You'll hurt us. Add assault to your growing list of crimes? You don't understand." He took a step forward. "I can fix everything. One real estate deal, that's all I need. To pay back the money you stole from Serena." His face twitched. "I didn't steal anything. It was an investment." "In what?" I demanded. "Show us the paperwork. Show us where the money went." "I don't have to explain myself to you." Corey appeared behind him, breathing hard. "Police are pulling up." River lunged forward suddenly, making a grab for the documents. Mom screamed and stumbled backward, papers scattering across the floor like autumn leaves. "No!" River dropped to his knees, scrambling to gather them. I kicked off my heels and dove for the papers, my wedding dress billowing around me. Corey grabbed River's shoulders, but River threw an elbow back, catching him in the stomach. "Those are mine," River shouted, snatching at the documents in my hands. "Nothing is yours," I yelled back. "Not these papers, not this house, not our lives." Heavy boots pounded up the stairs. Two police officers burst into the room, weapons drawn. "Hands where we can see them." River froze, a crumpled document still clutched in his fist. "This is a family matter. This is a criminal matter," a familiar voice called from the hallway. Juliet stepped into view, phone in hand. "And I've got the SEC on the line. They're very interested in speaking with you about Serena's missing money." "You called the SEC?" River's face went slack. "No," another voice said. "I did." Serena stood in the doorway, Addison beside her. Her elegant dress and perfectly styled hair contrasted sharply with her fierce expression. "Serena," River straightened up, switching to a softer tone. "Baby, I can explain." "Save it." She cut him off. "I've called the bank. I've seen the transfers. $300,000, River, my mother's money. It was an investment." "In what?" Serena demanded. "Show me the paperwork. Show me where my money went." River's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. "That's what I thought." Serena nodded to the officers. "I'd like to press charges." "No, wait," River started. But the officers were already moving in, handcuffs ready. "River Brewer," one officer began, "you're under arrest for fraud, theft by deception, and bigamy," Mom added, holding up a marriage certificate from the scattered papers. "Both marriage licenses, right here." As the officers led River away, he turned to make one last plea. "Addison, Princess, tell them." "Don't call me Princess." Addison's voice shook. "You lost that right when you stole from Mom." We watched in silence as they took him downstairs. The front door slammed, and then there was only the sound of our breathing. "Well," Juliet broke the tension, This is definitely going to make the local news. A hysterical laugh bubbled up in my throat. Here I was, in my wedding dress, surrounded by scattered papers, and two families, broken by the same man. "I'm so sorry," Serena said suddenly, looking at Mom. "I had no idea, all these years." Mom shook her head. "Neither did I. He fooled us both." $300,000, Serena whispered. "Everything we had." "Maybe not," Juliet spoke up. "The SEC is already freezing his accounts, and with two families pressing charges." "We'll help," I said firmly. "Whatever it takes." Corey cleared his throat. "Speaking of help, there's still a chapel full of wedding guests wondering what's happening." Reality crashed back in. My wedding. In all the chaos, I'd almost forgotten. Oh God, I looked down at my now dirty wedding dress. What a mess. "I don't know," Addison smiled slightly. "I think it's kind of perfect. Two families finding the truth on your wedding day. 300 guests, all dressed up, waiting to celebrate love and justice," Juliet added. "Seems like the perfect audience for a fresh start." I looked at Mom, then at Serena and Addison. In one day, I'd gained a sister and helped expose a lifetime of lies. Maybe it wasn't the wedding day I'd planned, but it was something better. It was real. Well, I straightened my veil. Let's not keep them waiting. As we headed downstairs, I realized this wasn't just my wedding anymore. It was a new beginning for all of us. The chapel doors opened, and all heads turned as I walked back down the aisle, this time with an unexpected entourage. My white dress was smudged, my veil slightly askew, but I'd never felt more ready to get married. "Before we resume," I announced to the gathered guests, "there's something you all need to hear." Corey took his place beside me at the altar, squeezing my hand. The afternoon sun streamed through the stained glass, painting everything in soft colors. "Many of you witnessed what happened earlier," I continued. "You saw my father crash this wedding, making accusations and demands. But that's not the whole story." Serena and Addison stood up from their seats in the front row. Mom joined them, and together they faced the crowd. "This is Serena," I gestured. For 20 years, she thought she was River's only wife. "And this is Addison, my sister, who just learned today that her father had another family." Murmurs rippled through the congregation. "But we're not here to dwell on River's crimes," I said firmly. "We're here because love, real love, is stronger than lies. And sometimes family isn't what you're born into, but what you choose." Addison stepped forward, her voice clear despite her tears. "All my life, I wondered why Dad was so secretive, why he'd disappear for days without explanation. Now I know he was living two lives, hurting two families. But today, standing here with my sister, the sister I never knew I had, I finally feel like I'm exactly where I should be." Serena spoke next, her elegant composure cracking slightly. "When I arrived here today, I thought I was just attending a stranger's wedding. Instead, I discovered my entire marriage was built on lies. But I also found something unexpected: understanding, support, and the truth we all deserved." Mom took both their hands in hers. "River tried to tear us apart today. Instead, he brought us together. And now, we're going to show him what real family looks like." The chapel erupted in applause. I saw tissues being passed around, tears being wiped away. So, I turned to the minister. "If you don't mind, I'd like to make one small change to the ceremony." He nodded, smiling. "Of course." "Addison." I held out my hand. "Would you stand up here with Juliet, as my sister and co-maid of honor?" Her eyes widened. "Really? Really?" As Addison took her place beside Juliet, I saw Mom and Serena embrace. Years of unknowing rivalry dissolving into shared understanding. "Now," I smiled at Corey, "let's try this again." The ceremony resumed, but it felt different now. Richer, more meaningful. When it came time for the vows, Corey's voice was steady and sure. "Celeste," he began, "I promise to love you in good times and bad." I didn't expect both to happen within the same hour. Laughter rippled through the chapel. "But watching you today, your strength, your compassion, Your ability to turn chaos into connection. I've never been more certain about anything in my life. You are extraordinary, and I can't wait to spend the rest of my life being amazed by you. Tears spilled down my cheeks as I spoke my vows. Corey, you've always been my rock, my safe harbor. Today, when everything was falling apart, you didn't just stand by me. You stood up for what was right. You helped me protect my family, all of my family. That's the kind of love I want to spend forever returning. When the minister pronounced us husband and wife, the cheers were deafening. As we turned to face our guests, I saw Juliet checking her phone. "The police just called," she whispered. "They found River's laptop. Everything's there. The fake investment schemes, the stolen money, all of it. He's not getting out this time." Relief washed over me, but it wasn't just about River's arrest. It was about standing here, surrounded by truth and love, with my expanded family watching. "Ready to celebrate?" Corey murmured as we prepared to walk back down the aisle. I looked at Mom, beaming through her tears, at Serena, standing tall despite her world being turned upside down, at Addison, my sister, finally where she belonged. "More than ready," I replied. But first, I turned and hugged Addison tight. "Thank you for being brave enough to tell the truth." She hugged me back. "Thank you for finding me." The wedding march played again as Corey and I walked down the aisle. But this time there were no interruptions, no secrets, no lies. Just family, complicated, unexpected, and real. As we reached the doors, I tossed my bouquet over my shoulder. Through some cosmic justice, it landed perfectly in Juliet's surprised hands. "Well," she laughed, "I guess truth and love really do win in the end." Looking at my new husband and my expanded family, I couldn't have agreed more. The reception was in full swing when Juliet rushed into the ballroom, waving her phone. "They found it. The money's still there." I jumped up from the head table, nearly knocking over my champagne. "What?" "The SEC traced Rivers' accounts," she explained, breathless. "He hadn't spent Serena's money yet. It was sitting in an offshore account, along with funds from other victims. They're freezing everything." Serena, who'd been deep in conversation with Mom at a nearby table, covered her mouth with her hand. "All of it?" "Every penny," Juliet confirmed. "They're already working on getting it returned to the rightful owners." The relief on Serena's face made my heart swell. Addison hugged her mother tight, both of them crying happy tears. "That's not all," Juliet continued. "Remember those property documents River brought? Complete forgeries. The house is safe, Beatrice. It was never in danger." Mom collapsed back in her chair. "Thank God." "I propose a toast." Corey stood, raising his glass. "To justice served. And to new beginnings," I added, looking at my expanded family. The DJ's voice cut through the celebration. "And now, it's time for the father-daughter dance." An awkward silence fell over the room. I felt my chest tighten. This was the moment I'd been dreading. But before the silence could become uncomfortable, Mom stood up. "May I have this dance?" Tears pricked my eyes as I nodded. The opening notes of "Wind Beneath My Wings" filled the room as Mom led me to the dance floor. "You know," she said softly as we swayed, "I always worried that River's absence would leave a hole in your life. But watching you today, I realized something. You never needed him. You became strong, not because of him, but despite him." "We both did," I whispered. Halfway through the song, I felt a tap on my shoulder. Serena stood there, Addison beside her. "Room for two more." Mom smiled and opened our circle. The four of us danced together, creating our own version of family right there on the dance floor. "The university called," Mom said suddenly. "About buying the house." I tensed. "And?" I told them yes. She smiled at our surprised faces. "It's time for a fresh start. The money will be enough to buy 2 new houses. One for me and one for Serena and Addison. Next door to each other," Serena added. "If that's okay with everyone." "More than okay," Addison grinned. "I've always wanted a bigger family." The song ended, but our circle remained unbroken. Corey joined us, along with Juliet, who was still checking her phone for updates. River's preliminary hearing is set for next week. she reported. With the evidence they found, he's looking at serious time. Good, I said firmly. He needs to face the consequences of his choices. Speaking of choices, Addison pulled an envelope from her purse. I have something for you, Celeste. I was going to wait, but, well, now seems right. Inside was a college application to the same university where I taught. I thought, she said hesitantly, maybe my big sister could help me with my freshman year. I hugged her tight. I'd be honored. The DJ switched to an upbeat song, and soon the dance floor was packed with guests. I watched as Mom and Serena taught each other their favorite dance moves, as Addison and Juliet took selfies, as Corey twirled me around until I was dizzy with laughter. Happy? Corey asked as we caught our breath. I looked around the room, at Mom, finally free from River's shadow, at Serena, who'd found strength in truth, at Addison, my sister, who'd chosen honesty over loyalty to a lie, at Juliet, still fighting for justice with every phone call. You know what? I smiled. I actually am. River tried to ruin this day, but he gave me something instead. The family I never knew I needed. Plus, Corey grinned, this will make one hell of a story to tell at Christmas dinner. Christmas dinner, I repeated, the idea settling warmly in my chest. With all of us together. The photographer called everyone for a family photo. As we gathered, Mom and Serena in the middle, Addison and me on either side, Corey and Juliet flanking us, I realized something profound. Sometimes, the happiest endings don't come from everything going perfectly. They come from facing the imperfect moments together, from choosing truth over comfort, from building something beautiful out of broken pieces. Ready? The photographer asked. I looked at my family, not the one I was born with, but the one we'd created today, and smiled. Ready. The camera flashed, capturing not just a moment, but a beginning. Our beginning.